On this episode of The Engaging Marketeer, I'm going to be addressing a question I was asked recently about Google Business Profile. It concerned whether, as a business, you absolutely needed to put your address on your Google Business Profile. Now, let's start off with the Google Business Profile first and get the important shit out of the way that everybody should know, but I'm going to cover it just to be thorough. That if you don't have a Google Business Profile, then stop listening to this podcast right now and go and set one up, because it is an absolute essential for every single business to have one. If you don't have one, you are missing out on loads of free business. With a Google Business Profile, it will help you appear on Google's Maps, Google's location services. It will help you appear for geographical searches. It will show you statistics on how many people view your Google Business Profile, how many people call you from it, how many people click through to your website from it, how many people ask directions to your premises from it, and it will allow people to leave you reviews so you get social proof. And it costs you absolutely nothing and takes you about half an hour to set one up. So if you don't have one, what the hell are you waiting for, and go and get one? Now, let's look at the question I was asked to begin with. Do you have to have your address visible on your Google Business Profile? Now, why would you not want that? There's a couple of reasons you might not want that. You might be a trade, for example, a plumber, an electrician, a joiner, and you want to do business within, say, a 20 or 30 mile radius of where you live. So you have set up your Google Business Profile, you put your address in to denote where you are, but you don't actually want customers rocking up at your house and knocking on your door or banging on your window saying, "Are you in? Can you come and fix my taps?" Because that's not really how it works, and that's going to be very irritating, so nobody's going to want that. So you don't want your address there for that. You may also deal with sensitive issues of which there's, what's the best way to put this, where there's conflict, where there's differences of opinion, for example. So last year I had a post on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. Elon Musk can get knotted. I had a post on Twitter go viral because I had some leaflets come through the door from a local councillor campaigner who wasn't a councillor. She was trying to get elected, and she was basically trying to get elected on anti-trans rhetoric. So trans people shouldn't be allowed anywhere, basically, where she was, because she didn't like them, she didn't trust them. And there was a few of them around the UK doing this, and I put that on social media. It got a few 100,000 views, lots of interaction, including from a former gladiator, Sharon Davis, and former Olympic swimmer, who herself is a little bit nutty, but we won't go into that either. But when you're doing stuff like that and you're involved in arguments where there's going to be differences of opinion, you may not want your address to be online because you don't want people turning up at your house and chucking things through your window, that sort of thing. So again, you might want to hide your address for that. But is that a problem? Is that going to affect your Google rankings? Is that going to affect the traffic you get, which is going to affect the inquiries and the leads you get, and is ultimately going to affect the business you get, the sales you get? Well, in a word, yes, that is a problem. If you hide your address, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, I'm not going to lie to you, it is going to negatively impact your website traffic, your rankings, your sales, your business. It is going to be it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. So you have to decide right now, is that problem worth it? Is hiding my address on my Google Business Profile and not displaying it worth it for the lack of business I'm going to get as a direct result? And that's a question only you can answer. To hide your address is quite simple. You log in and you put your address to be private so that it's not visible. And you can put in your service areas. So if you live in Chester, for example, and you want to do business in Chester, Ellesmere Port, Warrington, Runcorn, that kind of thing, you would put those in as service areas, draw a little map, and that's where Google would theoretically put you up if people in those areas were looking for what you do. Of course, if they're in Runcorn and you're in Chester and they put in, "I'm looking for a plumber in Runcorn," it's going to show them first. It's going to show them first. It's not going to show you because you are not physically there. If you are in Chester and there's 3 other plumbers in Chester and somebody looks for a plumber in Chester, your address isn't public, theirs is, you're going to struggle. It's probably going to show them first. That's just the way that it is. But there are a few things you can do to mitigate this risk. So, for example, you can talk about the locations and areas that you serve within the description itself when you're writing your description on your Google Business Profile. You've got to be careful you don't be spammy with this, because Google's going to notice it. It's going to spot it. You could be descriptive within the location. So, for example, some people have, say, Chester plumbers or Chester electricians in their name, but the location in the name is going to help them if they don't have the actual physical address within the profile. But the best thing you can do is actually with the website. This is really common and really effective. Now, before I move on to that, I've got to address the other question I keep getting asked, and that's, do I need a website if I've got a Google Business Profile? Or do I need a website if I've got a Facebook page? I get loads of business from my Facebook page. I get loads of business from my Google Business Profile. I don't need a website. You don't need a website. Nobody needs a website. They're outdated. Absolute bollocks. If you have loads of business from your Facebook page, fantastic. Well done. Great for you. What happens when Facebook changes its algorithm again and decides that no Facebook pages are going to show up unless you pay money for them? What happens if Google Business Profile decides that only people that pay money on ads are going to have their business profile show up, or they're going to show up first? You don't know what it's going to do. You cannot control it. You cannot be beholden to something that you don't own. Whereas with a website, you own it. It's yours. Nobody can take that off you. Assuming it's all set up right, of course, nobody can take that off you. Whereas if you set up your website and you have location pages for where you actually do business, so for example, it could be Chester, Ellesmere Port, Runcorn, Wrexham, that kind of thing, it's towns around the local area, and you have content on those pages that talks about those areas, talks about the kind of clients or the kind of services that you have and you do in those areas, that's going to help you to rank. And we know that because that is what we've done for clients, what we do for ourselves. Important caveat at this point. A lot of businesses will see this and think, ooh, that's really easy. All I need to do is list out all the towns, copy the page, and just change the name of the town. No, that is something that businesses have done for a very long time, and for a period it works. For a short period, yes, you might get rankings, you might get traffic, you might even get business from that, but that is called spam. Google will spot it, Google will identify it, and Google will see to it that you don't get that traffic anymore. Do not do that, because it will not work. That content all has to be unique. It all has to be relevant to the area, relevant to the location that you want to rank for, relevant to what you do and the clients that you help within that location. Make it interesting, make it useful, make it engaging. It should be obvious, but I had to stress that as well. Now, that's an easy thing to do. It's time consuming because you have to do it for every location, but it is an easy thing to do, and once done, it's there forever. You could then write additional content on your website, blogs, articles, features, whatever you want to call it, about the kind of clients that you help in those areas, and then link those blogs back to the landing page, which would then be called a pillar page, a pillar content page, which tells Google that what you do in Wrexham is really important. Therefore, anybody looking for the services that you have in Wrexham, it should rank you. Nice and simple, isn't it? Nice and simple. Now, there are a few other things you could do to help, and I'm going to caveat these because they may or may not work. Many years ago, for example, I used to work for a digital marketing agency based in Manchester, and they had some clients all around the UK that were quite big companies. And this was in the early days of digital marketing, early days of search engine optimization, where it was the Wild West. You did shit that really you don't do anymore. And one of the companies that was doing shit that you probably shouldn't do anymore was an aerial installation company, one of the big boys. And they were based down south somewhere, but they wanted to rank in every town and city across the UK for where they wanted to install aerials. Makes sense. So what they did was they took out virtual offices in every single one of those locations. It could have been a Regis office or an MWB office or whatever other serviced offices are available. And they set up Google Business Profiles for every single one of those locations with that address as the office. So if you wanted to rank in a particular town, you could set up a virtual office. Or you could set up your accountant's office if your business address happens to be registered with your accountant, as a lot of people genuinely is, because when an accountant sets up a limited company, quite often they'll use their own address for the official mailings they get from Companies House, from HMRC, so you don't have to bother with that, and that will be your official company address at your accountant's. You could use that address, because that's genuinely your business address. If that happens to be located in the area that you want to rank for, then happy days. Nothing wrong with you doing that. Nothing wrong with you doing that. Virtual office Google doesn't really like. because you're not really there. It's not really helping people. And a PO box, it really doesn't like, so you're probably not going to get away with that. But you could try it. If you absolutely want to rank in an area that you don't want your address in and you do not want your address public, give it a go. See if it works for you. You may find it works. But above all, the best thing to do, if you possibly can, is to have your address public on your Google Business Profile. That is the best thing that you can do. If you can't do that, then create content pages on your website that will do it for you, that will create those areas on your site for what you want to rank for. That will strongly help you. Create blogs, articles, features, then linking back to those areas to make Google know that they are content pillar pages, they are the important areas, the important services that you want to rank for. That is what's going to work. So, in short, yes, you can hide your address, but if you do, it will affect your rankings. I can't sugarcoat it, it will. But there are ways that you can mitigate that. I hope this podcast has been useful, and if it hasn't, then I apologize profusely. But I've been Darren, you've been listening to The Engaging Marketeer, and I will catch you on the next podcast.